I'm here today in Silver Pine, Nevada, and I just wanted to say thank you to our viewers. Our mission is to bring the world together through story, one random act of kindness at a time. Here in Silver Pine, the early mornings smelled of dew and fresh-cut grass, with birdsong breaking the silence as neighbors brewed coffee in small kitchens before work. The ache in his back, a reminder of his effort, and the stiffness in his knees, a testament to his determination. Neighbors began to notice, pausing on their walks, offering cautious waves or soft good mornings as they passed. Families came each evening to tend their small patches, sharing stories over fences, exchanging recipes, and helping each other carry baskets of produce home. Ethan's family, once struggling to find activities for him after school, found themselves part of a growing community. With Ethan proudly bringing home tomatoes and beans he had helped grow, Frank, once isolated in his quiet house, found his days filled with laughter and conversation. His evenings spent resting with the comforting soreness of a day's honest work. The town council noticed the change, awarding the garden a small grant to build raised beds and a tool shed, with a plaque that read, "The Linda Morris Community Garden, where hope grows." On the day the plaque was installed, neighbors gathered under the maple tree, sharing lemonade and stories as Frank stood by the rose bush, now blooming with soft pink flowers. He looked at the faces around him, children laughing, parents chatting, neighbors greeting each other with warmth, and felt Linda beside him, her laughter in the breeze, her love in the warmth of the sun on his shoulders. As the sun set over Silver Pine, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink, Frank whispered, "Thank you, Linda," knowing that the garden had not only transformed an abandoned lot, but had healed a piece of his heart, bringing him back to life through the simple act of planting seeds and nurturing them into bloom, reminding him and everyone around that, even in small towns and even in small acts, hope and love can grow again. Frank would nod, sweat dripping down his brow, focusing on each patch of earth as if it were a promise to Linda. This story was filmed on location with the generous support of a local production fund. Thank you to all our supporters for making these high RPM USA stories possible. Your support brings these videos to millions of people around the world, inspiring them to be kinder to each other and to believe in the power of humanity. To learn how you can support our work, visit our website. Now go out into the world and do something good today. One morning, a young boy named Ethan, about 12, stopped at the fence, watching Frank work. "Mister, what are you doing?" Ethan asked, curiosity shining in his eyes. Frank wiped his brow, leaning on his cane, and replied, "Making a garden." The next day, Ethan returned with a small rake from his mother's shed, asking if he could help. "Sure thing, son," Frank said, smiling, surprised by the kindness blooming in his chest. Together, they began clearing larger patches, Ethan's laughter ringing across the lot as he joked about worms and dirt, reminding Frank of the days he spent gardening with Linda, her laughter blending with the birds. Soon, other neighbors joined, bringing tools and seeds. Mrs. Alvarez, who lived across the street, brought seeds she had saved from her backyard tomatoes. Mr. Jenkins, a retired school principal, arrived with a wheelbarrow and gardening tools, saying he had nothing better to do. Parents came with their children, eager to help, and soon the abandoned lot was filled with the sound of shovels turning soil, laughter, and the gentle hum of people working together. Frank found himself teaching Ethan how to plant rows straight, sharing stories about Linda's roses, while Ethan told Frank about his dreams of becoming a firefighter. The lot, once a forgotten patch of weeds, was slowly transforming into neat rows of turned soil ready for seeds and life, becoming a place where people came not only to work, but to find connection in the simple act of tending the earth together. On the corner of Oak and Main sat a chain-link fence surrounding an overgrown abandoned lot, filled with weeds and rusting cans, a forgotten piece of land that children avoided and neighbors ignored. Bright marigolds lined the edges to keep pests away. Rows of tomatoes reached for the sun, and small bean plants climbed trellises made from old scrap wood the neighbors had donated. Frank found himself waking up each morning with a purpose he hadn't felt in years, packing a small thermos of coffee and a sandwich, before heading to the garden where Ethan would often be waiting, eager to water the plants. Other children joined, learning how to plant seeds and pull weeds, their laughter filling the air as parents watched, grateful for a safe place for them to learn and play. One Saturday, the neighbors organized a small potluck in the garden, bringing folding chairs and picnic blankets, dishes of homemade casseroles, and pies. Frank sat under the shade of a newly planted maple tree, looking around at the people gathered, feeling Linda's presence in the warmth of the sun and the laughter around him. He shared stories of how Linda loved to bake peach pies and how she used to give away flowers to neighbors. And as he spoke, Mrs. Alvarez gently placed a small potted rose bush in Frank's hands, saying, "For Linda." Tears filled Frank's eyes as he carefully planted the rose bush near the center of the garden, whispering, "We did it, sweetheart." The garden had become more than a patch of reclaimed land. It had become a sanctuary where people found peace, children found joy, and neighbors found each other again, united by the simple act of growing life together. Frank Morris, 74, a retired Marine and widower, passed by that lot every morning during his walk, using a cane he didn't like but needed after an old injury. Frank lived alone in a modest one-story house, filled with photos of his late wife, Linda, and dusty medals from a life spent serving others. But now spent in solitude, days blending together into a quiet, empty routine. Every morning, Frank would pause at the fence, gripping the cold metal. As he looked at the tangle of weeds and trash, remembering how Linda loved gardening, how her roses once filled their yard with color and life, how she would wave to neighbors as she worked, her laughter drifting across the fence. One morning, as the sun rose and the light turned the dew on the weeds into tiny jewels, Frank felt a stirring he hadn't felt in years. He returned home, rummaged in the garage, and found Linda's old gardening gloves and a small trowel, her name written in faded marker on the handle. The next morning, he unlocked the old gate of the lot and stepped inside, the weeds brushing against his jeans as he made his way to the center, where he knelt with effort and dug into the hard earth, feeling it crumble between his fingers, a small prayer escaping his lips as he whispered, "Let's do this, Linda." It was the first step in reclaiming a piece of forgotten land, and perhaps a piece of himself. And because of your support, we've been able to share nearly 6,000 stories so far. So thank you. This is the story of the garden behind the fence. Every morning, Frank would arrive at the lot with a thermos of coffee and a sandwich, taking pride in his slow progress as spring turned to early summer. The garden behind the fence began to bloom, patches of green sprouting where there was once only dirt. By the end of summer, the garden was in full bloom, its rows lush with vegetables, flowers, and the gentle hum of bees moving from blossom to blossom. All the people in this story are actors, and the town is called Las Vegas, Nevada.